Board of Commissioners for Monday, October 3rd, 2022. Mr. Berman, if you would take the roll.
Commissioner Gondik.
Present.
Commissioner Forresty Grubb.
Here.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Here.
Commissioner Cavender.
Here.
Commissioner Quinn.
Here.
Commissioner Hart.
Here.
Commissioner Wexler.
Here.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Here.
Commissioner Holmes.
Here. If we could now stand, and I would ask everybody to remain standing after the pledge. Chief?
Pledge allegiance.
The United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
If everybody could remain standing, just a moment of silence for Nicholas Elizalde. Thank you all. First item on our agenda is comments from Scott Selkowitz, Chairperson of the Senior Advisory Council, on the Senior Survey and Needs Assessment. Welcome. Is the light lit?
Now it's lit. Okay.
Now it's on.
It's on now. Good evening, and thank you for once again inviting me to address all of you. And we were so worried about the drought, right? At the last meeting, I had talked about the fact that the Senior Citizens Advisory Council had embarked on a two-part outreach effort to better collect data and understand the needs of the seniors within the township. Once we understand, we can better advise. The first component, the open house scheduled for October 19th. Registration is alive and well, and thank you very much for reaching out to your constituents. As of this evening, we have close to 40 people registered for the event after the first week. Once again, I ask all of you to continue to push out the message. We can have up to 100 people, and so far we're pleased with the response so far. Part two of our outreach is a Senior Citizen Survey Needs Assessment. And as I indicated last week, after almost 5 months of work, we're very pleased with the results of it. Pleased with the format of it. It'll be on jotform.com. Thanks to Christine for her work in getting it online. It goes live October 11th through November 18th. We figured we'll cut it off right before Thanksgiving because nobody's going to worry about a survey during the holiday season. So it becomes live October 11th through November 18th. Once again, just like the open house, people will be directed, and it's on your announcement in your packet, to go to the township website. There'll be a link which will take people directly into the survey itself. Also, it'll be advertised on township social media. At our October 19th event, we will have a survey table where people can come up and complete the survey. And next week, I'm also meeting with members of my subcommittee to look at some other ways of bringing in this data and administering the survey as well. As it's indicated in your packet, the areas that we're gathering information include public safety services and resources, utilization of township facilities and programs, utilization of services offered by private agencies, volunteerism and civic engagement, and community information dissemination. So we do look forward to having a nice survey results, a number of people taking the survey. And once again, I ask all of you to please reach out to your constituents, informing them of the survey, and we hope by the end of the year to have some very critical and important data to share with everybody. Any questions? Once again, thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Selkowitz. We're going to go slightly out of order. I'm going to switch Commissioner Committee and Police Department. Chief?
Thank you, Commissioners.
Welcome, Chief Viola, Deputy Chief Hagan.
So I'm going to go a little out of order myself tonight. Before I give the report for last month, I think we were going to talk about the incidents that have happened in Haverford Township over the past 2 weeks or so. So I have with me tonight Dr. Maureen Rushi. Everybody knows the superintendent of school, Pete Donaghy from the high school, and Dan Harahan from the middle school. They'll have a couple of comments, I think, when I get done, if that's okay.
Certainly. Good to see you.
So to bring everybody up to speed of what's been going on, everyone, I'm sure, has seen the video and the news reports of the assaults at the Friday night 9/23 at the Wawa and the Stadium incident on 9/25. As a result of that, during that investigation, we found an unreported crime that happened on August the 25th on the grounds of the high school. We're calling it the turf robbery because it happened around the football field. We found that a male was robbed at the point of at gunpoint. We feel that what we found that during the investigation that it was a BB gun, but it went unreported from 8/25 until a month later because the victim was so afraid of what happened. What we found during that the suspect who did that robbery was involved with the Wawa assaults on 9/23 and the Stadium incident on 9/25, where the sergeant was making an arrest and he encountered youths who were fighting with him, taking verbal assaults, and then they went to arrest a second one, and the same thing happened. So it was an ongoing issue. So the Wawa assaults, we have eight people identified who will be charged with different charges as it goes along. So the youth system, the juvenile system, is not the same as for the adults. We have to go through petitions, take them to get them approved by the DA's office, and then proceed through juvenile court. So it is a different system where you just don't lock somebody up with a warrant. So when there's children involved, it's concerning. As a result of that, we as the police department have taken this extremely seriously. We're concerned about it. We're residents in this town also. So we have beefed up patrols. We have taken attacks to different lighting in front of the Wawa and the side of the stadium and the back of the stadium. And we have a camera out front that records 24 hours a day now, and we will continue with this with increased patrols as we see fit until we get this settled down. So we're moving forward with this. Detectives have been working nonstop on this charges, and probably more things will come out of this as we move forward. So I'll invite school district if they want to say a few words before I go into the rest of my report. Dr. Rushi.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for giving us a little bit of an opportunity to speak this evening. Anytime there's an opportunity for collaboration and cooperation between a variety of entities, we firmly believe that the only thing that will come out of that will be something good. As a school district, we are responsible for the education for students. We know that students will learn best when they feel safe in an environment, and they feel safe when they see the faces of their building principals and other administrators who can genuinely care for them. So the opportunity to be involved and work collaboratively with the police department around any issues that are going on, we always welcome that and appreciate that they will include us. And this time was no different. So, thank you.
So as Dr. Rushi said, we have an excellent working relationship. Anything that happens in the area, Dr. Rushi and I are on the phone with the principals. We're in constant contact and talking about if there's a concern, if there's a threat to the school, how we're going to handle the next day. So it's very important that we maintain this working relationship, and I expect we will, for quite some time. So it means a great deal that you can, call up the superintendent of school anytime, morning or night, and talk to her with an issue maybe going on in the area.
Chief, I meant to ask the Superintendent Rushi a question. Do you mind if I come back up? Just while you're here, is there anything you need from this board right now that would assist you in the work, and particularly the work you're trying to do right now, dealing with this, with with the crime that we're dealing with, but just generally in terms of your work with the PD and with the township.
Right off the top of my head, I can't, produce a list of things for you, sorry.
Tell 10 more police officers.
Go ahead. Yeah, you can tell me. 10 more police officers. Yeah.
In terms of, working with students, our job right now is to get students to return to school who, for whatever reason, find that difficult to do. Our board, through this, tax dollars paid throughout this community, had already agreed to put some additional mental health supports into our school system. It's never enough, but it's a good start for us to be able to look at how we can help the children, as I said, to feel safe and comfortable, coming into the building. And that's what we're doing. But I will come back if there is anything.
Yeah, I certainly, we understand and not trying to blur the lines between the very stark, differences in what we do as a township and what you do as a school district, but to the extent that we do cooperate with one another, and I think our relationship in the last couple of years has improved dramatically. I just, I make that request to you as an offer to you to remember to ask the township, to the extent that we have resources that are available, or there's things that we could provide to the school district to be able to deal with issues like this, because they have such an impact in the township, to be sure that you understand that you're welcome to ask for them.
I appreciate that offer.
Certainly.
Thank you.
If I could touch on something, I was at county council meeting today for some funding issues for the training center. But during one of the things on the agenda was funding for another crisis center to reopen at Fitzgerald Mercy Hospital, which I was very happy to see. We know with the closing of Delaware County and the transition of what's going on there, but I expect probably in 6 months we'll have another crisis center open instead of just having Crozier, what we've been going through over the past couple of years with mental health. And it's big for me. I mean, I've been pushing it with the DA's office and the rest of the county officials. And, I didn't know what's going to happen today. I just happened to be there. I was glad to see that. So with that, I'll go into my monthly report. So the report for September of 22, criminal arrests 19, juvenile arrests obviously next month. That'll go up considerably. Traffic citations 240, non-traffic 17, written warnings 179, 431 parking tickets. Robbery 100 block of County Line Road. A black male suspect displayed a small black handgun prior to demanding the victim's cell phone and wallet. The suspect fled on foot on County Line Road, crossing Ardmore Avenue. County Line Road on 916, County Line Road in Nelson Place. 2 victims were approached by a white male, 6 foot, large build, light hair, and a black male, 6 foot, large build, wearing a ski mask. One victim had no property on his person and fled after seeing the black handgun in the suspect's hand. Female victim was thrown to the ground and had her phone 11 taken. They fled in a gray SUV. And Lower Merion Police had a similar robbery with someone sold a gray or black SUV and a male matching that description. We had assault, Wawa, 1000 block of Darby Road, large fight, which I touched on, and the skating was the other one that I touched on, which the investigation is ongoing. Motor vehicle thefts, we had 3. 1900 block of Robinson Avenue, a 2016 black Lincoln was taken from the driveway. The keys were left inside the unlocked vehicle. 200 block of Foster, 2014 black Ford Escape, keys left the unlocked vehicle. And the third one's a renter failed to return a white Ford box truck to U-Haul, which we get on a regular basis. Theft from vehicles, 13, 400 block of Strathmore. Unlocked vehicles, $5 in loose change. Unit block of West Hillcrest, 2019 was entered, $55 in U.S. currency and a pair of glasses. An unknown black male wearing dark clothing was reported to be trying door handles on a unit block of West Hillcrest. However, the suspect was not located. 300 block of Sagamore. Victim observed an individual hunched down behind her vehicle located at 300 Sagamore. Subject was a younger white male wearing a gray sweatsuit. She had discovered that her car was going through and nothing was taken. 300 block of Sagamore, another Audi was taken, $5 and change. 300 block of Sagamore, a Honda was entered, nothing taken. 450 Ardmore Avenue, Suspects in a black SUV occupied by two white males did forcibly enter a victim's vehicle and stole $250 in cash from a wallet and debit card. The car was later used at a store. A second car in the lot was entered. However, the victim had left before the report was filed. In Uniblock in Kilmore, a Hyundai was entered and an Amazon gift card was stolen. 4 in a block of Bryan, the victim reports 2 vehicles taken. His home exterior cameras did not capture the theft. These vehicles are all unlocked, mind you, except for the one that was damaged at the country club or the golf club. 3 in a block of Ardmore, theft of purse. A unit block of Upland. Numerous vehicles were entered on 921, 701 Westchester Pike, 28, 36, 49, 55, and 67 Upland roads. Police did arrest one man after a brief foot chase. And then the 300 block of Edge Hill Road, license plate was stolen from a car. K-9 usage, assist U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force for a warrant service in Chester. Article search K-9 bar assisted with locating a suspicious person that fled from police. He was arrested, charged with loitering and prowling at night. Vehicle check, 250 Westchester Pike, and assist call when borrowed for a track of a suspect that fled from police. That's my report. Oh, I'm sorry. One last thing I want to touch on is the mail thefts. We have approximately 140 mail thefts reported in the past year, which is an outrageous amount. We are in contact with the postal authorities. Obviously, they're inundated with these thefts. And it's not just happening here, it's happening all over the country. I will say it again, I will encourage everyone, if you're going to mail anything, take it inside the post office, not the post office box, outside, bring it inside, drop it in a slot. People are going through mailboxes with that many. There's always a consideration, maybe it's happening in the main post offices where mail's being taken, but I encourage people to lock your cars and watch where you can drop your mail, put it inside the post office.
Chief, a couple of questions. You mentioned, very last thing, you said 140 instances of mail theft, which is an extraordinary amount, but we don't have a disproportional amount of these in Haverford Township
No, we
compared to
don't.
any other
No.
regions.
It's across the country. So we're I won't say we're the average. I'm not sure what everybody else has, but it's the numbers are way up all over the place.
This would also be a good time, Chief, for us to remind folks who have concerns. We obviously, before the last week's events of the juvenile attacks, there were the armed robberies in Ardmore. People were very concerned about those and still are. I think it's worth reminding folks again about, reporting things that look out of place, reporting people that look out of place, and that should be done through 911. Is that correct?
Always through 911. Please don't wait till the next day if you see something, and considering that it may be suspicious and then realize the next day something happened, it could be very important we get that information immediately. So people are afraid to call 911. They think it's only the emergency line. It is the dispatch line for all of Delaware County. So that's the number. We don't have a dispatch center here. Everything is 911.
Right, and that's the point I wanted to stress, Chief, is that there is a lot of hesitation to call 911 because they think that
Yes.
they're gonna interfere with another call or misuse resources, or let's say waste.
There's multiple call takers at the 911 center. So and there's a fail-safe system if they're inundated with a storm or something, or the phones go back to other people who could pick up the phone. So.
Anybody have any questions for Chief? I will see you on Thursday at
Thank
my
you,
constituent
Commissioners.
meeting.
Yes.
Thank you, Chief. Next on our agenda, our Commissioner Committee updates. Actually, before they go, Principals Donaghy and Haran and Superintendent Roshi, thank you very much for being here.
Certainly.
Appreciate. And again, our whatever resources you need from the township, you just ask.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Committee updates.
Yes,
I know
just
Commissioner Hart.
a couple of things from the Parks Department. There were 2 steering committees got underway last week that I think we should mention. One is for the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan with our consultant, the HRG Group. If you recall, we got a grant from Delaware County to do this study. And I think it's worth describing the study, given that this is somewhat akin to the comprehensive plan, only focusing on the parks. And since we've had so much confusion about that, I thought we'd give an overview of exactly what this was. So the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan develops a township-wide vision specifically for township-owned parks, recreation facilities, and trails. The plan will evaluate existing conditions and community needs on a holistic scale as it relates to parks, recreation, open space, and trails. The plan will review and analyze data to develop recommendations for parks needs, improvements, maintenance, programming, connectivity, open space management, and potential acquisition. The process will involve working with municipal officials, the park and rec staff, rec groups, and residents to ensure that the plan reflects the community vision. These recommendations will help provide a basis for local decision-making and support grant applications for funding, which will help implement the plan. The first of 4 public meetings will be held, I'm not sure that there will be. There are 4? Yeah, I believe the first of 4 public meetings will be held November 9th. There's also going to be a community survey released soon. It was initially planned to release it at Haverford Township Day, but obviously that couldn't happen. I don't know, did anyone have any questions about that plan in particular? And the other one was at Brookline Park Planning Steering Committee also got off the ground last week with our consultant, Simone Collins. There will also be a community survey related to that committee, and the first public meeting is planned for October 24th.
Thank you, Commissioner Hart.
And one other thing, follow up from the Senior Advisory Council, their members requested that we consider changing the terms of their, currently it's a 1-year term. We're having to reappoint people every year. It's a very active group. They're looking for longer terms so that they can work on projects over a more prolonged period. They're also, I think we face the same situation with the Grange, although I think the Grange may be a little more complicated to change the term, but I think it's something for us to consider.
Well, I'd be all for that. It would be easier to keep people involved and stuff, and then the Grange is harder to do because I know we've tried.
I see no reason. I having spent a couple of years on this board now, I can recall, the reappointment of people to this commission, to the Senior Advisory Council a number of times. What we could consider in November would be a change to our ordinance, which creates the terms and describes the advisory council. I would suggest that we do 3-year staggered terms. It's 9 members, right? We have a 9-member board. 3-year staggered terms, and I would suggest that the 1st ward, the 4th ward, and the 7th ward in January get appointed to 3-year terms. The 2nd, 5th, and 8th get appointed to 2-year terms, and the 3rd, 6th, and 9th get appointed to 1-year terms. And then the following year there'll be a 3-year term, and that way we'll never have more than 1/3 of the board turning over in any typical year. Anybody see a problem with that? I will ask our solicitor to confirm that anything I just said is actually allowed. And if so, maybe we can consider an ordinance in November.
Yes, this would be a citizen board. So it would be up to this board as to determine how and how many people constitute it and terms for that.
Great. I know a couple years ago, we did a revamp of some of our boards to do exactly this, shorten some terms, lengthen some terms. So there should be a form.
There are some that require there to be certain numbers, like a shade tree commission or an EAC, but this is not one of those.
Okay.
More discretionary.
Great. Well, we don't have a work session in November, this is this can count as our conversation about this topic. I would suggest that this be put on the agenda for November and that a draft ordinance be circulated among us to take a look at. Anybody object to
Agree.
that?
I think changing the Grange term involves having the Grange make the change first, and so I think we would need to wait on them to do that.
Did I miss a step? Were we talking about the Grange? And I'm
No,
just-
well, some of the members of the Senior Advisory Council are also on the
Are on the
Grange,
Grange,
and they
yeah.
also have one-year terms, so they also suggested changing that, but I think that's a much more, we tried to make changes in the past, and
All right, well, let's,
they need to suggest the changes to us, I believe.
Yes, and they have their own bylaws as well that they need to be consistent with.
well, let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Let's do what we can in November, and we'll take a closer look at the Grange and see what needs to be done.
And one other follow-up, I had said that I was going to work on updating our sidewalk ordinance. In talking to the planning, some members of the planning commission, they suggested we hold off until after we do the comprehensive plan, since there will probably be a number of changes that we may propose to the land use, and that it would be better to work on that all at once rather than, and we continue, this board has we have to approve waivers, so there's, what I had suggested with the sidewalk was to make things easier for the planning commission, but we'll ultimately have the choice on anything that would happen before then.
Well, okay. I mean, I would, it makes sense since there are procedures we have to go through to make changes, public hearings. And so if we know we're going to be doing a bunch of zoning changes associated with the comprehensive plan, that makes good sense to do that. But doesn't mean it's not worth at least taking a look preliminarily at what we might have, what you might have in mind in terms of the exceptions to the sidewalk, whether or not we want to consider doing a fee and what the standards are for waiving the fee.
Right, but again, we are capable of, I think we should make those changes, but I kind of agree with their thoughts that we should make all the changes at one time. And there's nothing that prevents us right now. Our ordinance is written so that in these subdivision developments, sidewalks are supposed to be put in.
Well,
And so,
I'm not sure that's correct. I think that was one of the concerns that kind of changed my mind about all this 2 months ago, was that
no,
it's as if that we find
they're
otherwise.
granting waivers, so we're granting waivers.
I can call this up. We have to find the, it's currently written that unless the board requires sidewalks, not waives, and we don't require them until, we don't know anything about the development until it comes to us. That was my concern, was that it worried me that the planning commission was working outside of its powers when it was requiring sidewalks. And I would prefer that we just make the policy decision as a board that sidewalks are required. Because
You're gonna have to get back to that.
yeah, unless it's in another section, when we were looking at that provision on the issue of that Darby Road development, it was when we were examining that, Commissioner Hart, that I was worried that our ordinance
The requirements would be to maintain at the owner's cost said streets, curbs, sidewalks, drainage facilities, et cetera.
When required to do so by the Board of Commissioners.
When such repair, I might be at the wrong section.
That's it, yeah.
I'd have to find it for you.
All right, before the
Find it
meeting
on the
ends,
fly.
I'll find that section, but it was our examination of this a month ago that raised my concern that the township has not been clear. We've not been clear in an ordinance that sidewalks are required and that a waiver can be applied for, or a fee can be imposed, or or something can be negotiated. And I thought we wanted to be clearer. So I don't know how long the comprehensive plan is going to take. I think sidewalks, especially with, these will happen with or without any changes to our comprehensive plan. I think we might want to move more quickly.
If they're not required, then I'll go ahead with.
Well, I'm gonna find this, and we'll not have a
Okay.
debate about it. I'll ask Mr. Walco to advise both of us on the issue, and then we'll circle back on this. Commissioner Hart, any other committee updates from you?
No, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioner updates, committee updates?
Mr. President,
Yes, Commissioner Trombetta.
I'd like to make 2 committee updates. First, the Economic Development Committee of the Board of Commissioners will be meeting on October 18th. We'll be inviting some members of the Discover Haverford Board to join us and discuss our work in partnership together. Yeah. Second, I've mentioned quite a few times about the composting ordinance. I want to assure everybody who's watching tonight and on this board that I am very much actively working to bring that to you. The plan is to have it hopefully in November. In fact, I'll say the plan is to have it in November. We've given a great deal of thought and consideration and included input from our township staff to make sure that this ordinance is really something that we can be proud of. So it is coming, promise. We just wanted to work out a few more tweaks with the language.
Commissioner Trombetta, we do not have a work session in November traditionally, and in fact, we don't have a work session this November. Is there, do you want to give us an idea of remind us of the general purpose of and scope of this composting ordinance?
Right, so currently the language that is in code is relatively vague and can be left up to interpretation. Some could interpret that we do allow composting, some can interpret that we really don't allow composting, and we thought it was important to make it very clear exactly what is and is not allowed. Specifically, we are planning on including in this language that really, if you want to compost, that you should be doing it in composting bins. Again, we're tweaking the language and the specifications about what these bins have, including air ventilation. And that was the final piece, the language that held up. But I would gladly make this available as soon as possible.
And we're looking to, I guess, other townships and other model ordinances for, the types of bins and the specifications we're using.
Right, no question about it. The Environmental Advisory Committee has been very thorough, as they always are with our with the recommendations they make. And yes, they absolutely do perform a lot of research, and I myself have done research into best practices.
So this is certainly not a substitute for any conversation we might have when we have the ordinance in front of us in November, but does anybody else have any questions for Commissioner Trombetta? Commissioner Trombetta, do you have any other commissioner committee update?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Does any other commissioner have any commissioner committee update they'd like to give? Okay, we will move on. Our agenda next week includes Finance Department. We'll be awarding a contract for new auditors for a 3-year term. Amy, why don't you give us 30 seconds and remind us why we do this?
Sure. If you remember when our auditor visited earlier this summer, we explained that they were at the end of their 6-year term. We can appoint for 3 years and then renew for 1 additional 3-year term. So we were required by administrative code to go out for RFP. We posted it on the website. We reached out to those firms who were qualified in the area and are very active in the governmental accounting forum. As you know, not every firm can perform a governmental audit. There are certain standards, different accounting standards, GASB as opposed to FASB that's filed, and Yellow Book standards. So we reached out to qualified firms and we received 2 proposals. And we are recommending Maley LLP, who has served us in the past back in 2010 through 2015. They were the lowest responsible bid. They are very well known in governmental accounting and auditing areas. I believe our township manager is even familiar with them in his professional life. And as I said, they have a little bit of history with us too, which always helps. So we hope the board will reappoint them for a 3-year term.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Cuthbertson or any comments?
I have a brief question. In reviewing over the paperwork on this, there's reference to a township audit and a single audit. Can you just explain to me what the difference is between those?
Sure. The township audit is the financial statements of the township, the general fund, sewer fund, capital projects fund, all the operating funds of the township. The single audit governs the federal funds we get. The single audit is required for any municipality or governmental unit, state, local, who receives more than $750,000 in federal funding, which we do on an annual basis, especially through the CDBG program. And now with the ARPA monies that we have received, we are clearly in excess of receiving and spending $750,000 of federal funds. So that's a special audit on those funds, special type of requirements, special type of criteria, special type of audit. So everybody quotes that separately.
Okay. And they were our auditor before. I'm assuming that when they did it before, there was no questions or problems or things that they could have done better back then?
No, we were quite happy with them, and they were also permitted to be renewed for an additional 3-year term at the time, so they served us for 6 years at the time, so we were pleased with their work.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Ms. Cuthbertson? Ms. Thank you. Next, we will have, we'll consider ordinance number P14, the sale of a cell tower. That'll be our second reading. Anybody have any questions or comments on that? We will also be doing a traffic ordinance for the second reading, P17. P18, amending Chapter 104 Housing Codes. Mr. Berman, as I understand, this is, can you tell me what this relates to?
Yes, this relates to rental properties. It came through the Chief Fire Code official, Steve Poole, who couldn't be with us tonight because he's ill. But I think Joe Celia has a little bit of background to add on that, or Commissioner Wexler.
I mean, generally, we're cleaning up sections with the help of Mr. Walco. Stephen revised the ordinance, so things have changed. One of the major things from a input from the Bureau of Fire was the safety of fire alarms are now usually used by 10-year batteries as opposed to the D-cell batteries that you're typically used to. You know, changing them every time you change your clocks was the mantra to do that when you change your batteries. So one of the things there is doing that and then changing the amount of fire extinguishers in multi-dwelling rental properties, and then which then triggers inspections. And then I guess the language, John, was probably moving some things out of fire and safety side into the rental property inspection material side so that they get inspected when the rental properties are there, and also single-family dwellings. So it's really some cleanup and then also trying to catch up with the safety regulations that are recommended by the National NFPA for fire and smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Anything else, John? Is it?
Any other, any questions or comments on that?
I have a clarification question, please.
Yes.
Does this only apply to rental properties, or does it also include single-family? I'm looking at section 104-13, fire and life safety requirements, letter B. It talks about the responsibility of owner of new and existing 1 and 2 family dwellings. Is that not rental properties? I'm a little confused here.
Okay. So what that is, it's, Commissioner, it's for rental properties for 1 and 2 family dwellings.
Okay, all rental properties?
All rental properties, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear that it's an entire umbrella. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
New construction is also required to have
Yes, new
the updated
construction.
standards as well.
Also, transfer of houses, we do have a ordinance for the smoke detectors and CO detectors for transfers.
So that would be not just rental properties, just?
No, the 10-year batteries for rental properties. That's for rental properties. But the 1 and 2 family dwellings, as far as selling them, you have an option. You don't have to put, if it's not a rental.
Got it, thanks.
So with a transfer, and they're not required to have a 10-year battery?
If it's not a rental. I don't believe so. I might be wrong, John.
Not yet. I mean, that's something I think we have to look at, but.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's read that way. Do you know, John, was it written that way?
I mean, I'm not sure if it was in that for the certificate of occupancy. I mean, this ordinance only addresses the rental property issues with those changes.
That's correct.
Again, it does add a number of other additional standards for multifamily houses, in addition to the single and twin families that just require those certain smoke detectors.
Well, we can look at the transfers. Maybe we can update that to a 10-year battery also.
Might make sense to do that. I mean, it's.
Right.
I do have a quick question. So, I mean, I know that, I guess my understanding of this is it's kind of just cleaning up language, but I did see a lot of requirements in there for, various emergency lighting, the push doors and the automatic closers and all that stuff. Is that new to our code, or is that existing? We're just kind of cleaning up language.
It's in the fire code, but it wasn't under the 104. We had to take it from different areas, so we put it under one.
Okay, so would it be correct to say that the majority of the rental housing or the rental properties, whether single or multi-use or single or multi-family, are in our township already comply with what's in here?
Not really. We updated some of the things because we weren't doing it in a rental property. We were only doing them in the new properties that are being built under the fire code. So now we incorporated into the rental property inspection also to make sure we catch anything that went through the loophole.
So then I guess when renters turn over and they have to come out to get their renter's permit renewed, that's when they would have to come up to code?
No, that's not correct. On 1 and 2 family dwellings, yes, but on multiple family dwellings, we have a yearly inspection, and we record on that time when we do the yearly inspection.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other question?
Any other questions on ordinance P18? Thank you, Mr. Celia and Commissioner Wexler. Next, Resolution 2279 of 2022, which will amend the local tax collection law. Actually, it is a resolution about Act 57, amending the local tax collection law. Any questions or comments on that? Ms. Cuthbertson, could you be 30 seconds on this?
Sure, I can summarize. This is new law coming out of the Commonwealth that applies to all tax collectors, especially those, this has to do with transfers of ownership, and when there is a transfer of ownership, frequently the property owner, the new property owner, will not receive a tax bill. kind of slips through the cracks between when we get the duplicate from the county and before the deed is recorded. And what happens more times than none, those homeowners don't, maybe they should know that there's a tax bill out there, but they don't. And they don't really realize it until they receive a late notice. And by that point, they're already in penalty, which is the 10%, which is a big nut for everybody. So what this law will do is will protect homeowners in those qualifying events, such as a transfer of ownership within 12 months to essentially ask to be alleviated from those penalties. And I, as the tax collector, am allowed then to abate those penalties and accept that face, which is base tax.
And is it limited to just someone's first year of ownership?
Yes.
So if they just don't get 2023, but they got 22, 21, and 20,
Yes.
they don't have an excuse?
Correct.
And this resolution has the power of requiring our tax collector to waive this?
It wouldn't require her to waive it.
This
It would allow her
this
to
resolution
consider.
is required by the Commonwealth for all municipalities to pass, requiring the tax collector to provide this waiver in this limited circumstances qualifying event.
Got it. Sorry, Kevin, I interrupted you. Does anybody else have any questions about Resolution 2279? Hearing none. We will also next week consider a proposed settlement agreement relating to the matter of Sleepy Valley Holdings LLC versus Catherine Malloy. And that is also known as 1801 Manor Road. That is something we discussed appropriately in executive session. And we'll talk again next week. We will take formal action. We asked to take formal action next week to approve of a potential settlement in that matter. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that issue? Okay, we move on to contract work. An agreement with Par Recycle Works for leaf collection work. Mr. Berman?
This is the annual contract that we use for temporary labor to assist us with the collection of leaves during leaf season.
During the collection of leaves, are there any services that we postpone? We stop yard waste, right, during leaf collection, or do we?
I don't think we do stop yard waste.
No, are we going to close the cardboard? Okay.
No, we're going to do what we can to keep the recycling center going. And I'm not certain whether we stop yard waste during leaf collection season.
I don't think we do. Oh, we do?
I think we did.
Thank you.
All hands on deck go to leaves.
Well, I will once again make my suggestion. Should we vote it down 8-1? That I think we should go to bagging and bag collection rather than leaf vacuuming. If anybody feels like talking about that, I'll be in the back afterwards. So
You'll be by yourself.
yeah, well,
I'm sure he'll be talking
I have
to.
found that company enjoyable from time to time. So we move on to emergency repairs, sanitary, storm, and sewer. Mr. Berman, again, if you would just remind us.
This is a blanket contract that allows us to engage a contractor to assist us with emergency repairs. It's issued based on unit prices that are established at the beginning of the contract, and we'll have that presented for you in detail next week.
So this is a generic contract for a generic contractor, or is there one person in particular we are?
It'll be awarded to one person who is submitting the lowest responsible unit prices for the contract in general.
Okay, so they become our contracted go-to fixer in emergency sanitary and storm sewer repairs.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And what's the life of this contract?
I believe we issue 3-year contracts for this one. 2? Thank you. 2 years.
And I trust there's no evergreen provision in this. It's just each 2 years we will negotiate a new one.
What's evergreen, like a ability to renew it?
Where it's like without 6 months' notice, it just automatically renews.
Correct. It terminates after 2 years, and then we rebid it.
Rebid it.
and would then typically re-award it.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on that? We also have 3 contracts for consideration, Parks and Recreation, Just Tract, and CREC. Parks and Rec? Barrett? Mike, you got one?
The work at Guest Track is a resurfacing of the back court there. So we'll be doing paving that as part of our redevelop or our improvements at Guest Track. And the auto scrubber, which is a piece of equipment we use at the CREC to clean our floors, our gym floor, the walking track, and the hardscape floors inside the building. That's a replacement for that.
Yeah, like the mini Zamboni.
Exactly. Exactly.
Any questions or comments on those contracts? Any questions for Mr. Barrett?
I just have a quick question with regards to the mini Zamboni. What are we doing with the old one?
We keep it. We're going to keep it so that in case the new one goes down, we have a replacement for it, because we use it like 4 or 5 times a week. So it's crucial to our operation to keep the floors clean. So we want to have one in case one goes down for parts or something that's available.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay. Finally, we will be proclaiming Fire Prevention Week next week. Let me send, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we do not have a work session in November. If any commissioner now is aware of an issue that they want to raise because they expect us to be acting in November on a matter, I would say now is your time to at least raise it, so we could be aware of it, the public could be aware of it. Doesn't mean we can't discuss it at the November meeting, but again, we will not have a work session in November.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Just, I felt like I didn't articulate well enough the composting bill, and recognizing that we don't have the November work session, I did want to give a little more context. So this will still allow compost piles, but in those compost piles, it will only allow leaves and grass clippings. And again, there's more description about what is and is not allowed, but I wanted to make clear that that was the case. And then, whereas in compost bins or compost containers, more organic materials will be permitted. And so that, again, there's more description there, way more than I can share this evening. But again, I felt the need to clarify that a little further.
Okay, no, it's very helpful. And so for those people who, gather their grass clippings or their leaves in the backyard, nothing here is changing that. But folks who want to take their food waste, their vegetables, the plants, stuff like that, and compost it, that will be regulated, will be required to be contained in, appropriate containers that are specific for compost.
Correct. We wanted to be particularly thoughtful about that, as we do know we at times have issues with vermin, and we certainly didn't want that to create bigger problems if we were just allowing composting whenever and wherever. So again, there was thoughtful research put into exactly how this would work in our township and make it so we wouldn't have additional issues with code enforcement.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions about the composting ordinance that we will see in November? Does anybody have any other questions or comments about anything we're doing next week? Does anyone have anything they want to add or for us to consider between now and next week?
The only thing I would just circle back on with regards to is the sidewalk conversation we had. Just because we don't have a work session, it looks like maybe it's been identified, the section of the code that references sidewalks, and I would just indicate, and maybe our solicitor can give, his comments, but it indicates here under, looks like what, section 165B 4C, that sidewalks shall be required where, in the opinion of the Board of Township Commissioners, heavy pedestrian traffic will result, or where pedestrian safety requires such sidewalks. Sidewalks are required for any multifamily development. My interpretation of that language is it would require affirmative designations from this Board of Commissioners to specific areas. So without that designation being made, it would seem to me that sidewalks are not required. But I would ask, obviously, for the solicitor to weigh in on this one. That's just my interpretation of it.
So I don't typically have the solicitor weigh in publicly on our issues, but you've identified exactly the issue that I was concerned about, Commissioner Gondik, and that is why after we were considering and took the action that we took on Darby Road, I've asked for us to re-examine our ordinances and to put to this board the question of whether or not we want to make that determination, not on a case-by-case basis, but on a, as a policy of this township.
And in light of my reading of that, I would be supportive of your position to address it sooner rather than later. I understand the logic that Commissioner Hart, put out there for kind of the delay, but I think in light of the wording of the statute, it might be, we might be more inclined to act a little sooner.
And I appreciate that, and I'm going to push back at delay just so we don't suggest that Commissioner Hart was suggesting delay as opposed to recognizing the economy of doing this, at the same time that we consider what might be other sizable zoning changes. I know this was circulated among us during this call right now. I'm sorry, during our meeting, Manager Berman shared that provision with us. I would like our solicitor to advise us as to within our attorney-client privileges, advise us on the steps that he think we should take after he reviews that section, and in the other section, because I could very well be missing something else that states other policies or otherwise makes our position on sidewalks more clear. Any questions or comments on that or any other topic?
I think we need to look at it in a little bit more detail. I, for instance, on Steel Road, have 4 houses that were built right across from each other. One side was required to have sidewalks and curbing, where there's no curbing on the rest of that street. The other side was not required to have sidewalks and curbing, where there was curbing on the other side. So I don't know what the regulations are. It's not just sidewalks. We also have to look at curbing for stormwater management as well, in addition to sidewalks. If you're going to put sidewalks up, it makes sense that the curbing should also be the infrastructure should be there. We have a lot of streets that do not have curbing at all, and flood instances happen or whatever, but we got to be consistent. So it's got to be a bigger look than just saying we're going to require sidewalks everywhere, because that's also going to hint or insinuate that we have to have curbing there as well. So we got to look at this in a pretty good detail with the planning commission.
It's an excellent point, Commissioner Wexler. I will tell you that in 160-5, our general purpose and applicability for design standards, it is a clear statement of this township that curbs shall be provided for all existing and proposed streets. I don't know how some places have curbs and others don't. I don't know specifically right now how people get waivers, how people don't get waivers on those issues. And what became obvious to me looking at that sidewalk language is that we as a board need to be clearer on what the requirements are. Once we're clear on those, that's when you can create the standards and the criteria for exceptions, for waivers, for fees in lieu.
Right.
But
I mean,
it's an excellent point.
It is confusing. I know along the section along Stewart Field, the old Steel Field, we as a township installed curbing along there to alleviate the parking issue of people pulling up on our grass. The other side of the street does not have curbing, so parking goes on private property. People pull on front lawns of people because there is no curbing where there should be. So we're also going to look at how, we've never required it. Those houses have transferred every year. They've been inspected. If we're going to require it, you know, who's going to pay for it? Because we've inspected those homes and allowed them to be transferred without curbing and without sidewalks at those points. So
Great point.
we have to look at
Yeah,
in
the
greater
Sixth
detail.
Ward, I've got asphalt curbs in some areas, which are horrendous looking. I've got other areas that are just grass to macadam, and then other areas with curbs, and we enforce them. So that was the goal in addressing this a month ago, was that it is time to take a look at, I mean, we were specific to sidewalks, but you're right, it isn't just sidewalks, it's also sidewalks and curbs. And I think I would recommend that we do this independent of the comprehensive plan, only because based upon the conversations we've had so far about the comprehensive plan and the amount of reviews and the amount of hearings we have to hear on that, I think it would be worth our while to pursue them independently.
And just to clarify, my position isn't to ram down sidewalks and curbing down people's throats every time they transfer their house or anything along those lines. I just think that as a board, we need to have a little bit more understanding and involvement in the process to kind of, you know, take a little bit more control of some of the development that's occurring around the township to make sure that it actually does kind of fit within the grand scheme of, you know, what we're looking to accomplish.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner Gondik. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on this or any topic? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, we're adjourned.